I'll be so honest with you guys. People were commenting on my prediction video after chapter 1 came out, and I didn't remember a single thing I said in that video. So I had to rewatch it for this video. It would not only explain the dent on the pin, but the bruise on Wolfgang's neck.
I'm about to sing a song.
Damn, it's a steel rolling pin?
I'm about to sing a song.
It's taken years, but I finally understand Sayaka defenders. I am so glad I wasn't the only one who's completely thrown off about the wildness of this chapter. I was expecting something simple, something easy. I sat there and was like, okay, they're not gonna go completely off the walls for the first real trial. And then they did. Like everyone else, I have thoughts on it. I'm probably not going to get too much into the FTEs in this video and probably save it for a different video because I'll use that video to dive into how my perception of other characters changed in the chapter. And I was trying to figure out how to separate it all so that it doesn't sound like messy rambling, but I think I'm just gonna get into it.
What the fuck is this kid doing?
The voices! So in my predictions video, I mentioned that I felt that Damon was going to say or do something that lit a fuse in someone to get them to kill someone else, and I was kind of right about that. Sure, Ava was already in the process of planning a murder by the time Damon shows her Wolfgang's blackmail, because I'm assuming she already got the traitor perk by then, but it only served to solidify her resolve, almost like for her, it was some sign to go through with the plan. She was truly Eve in that moment. Eve in the folktale was already contemplating eating from the tree of knowledge, and the snake only strengthened her resolve. I also mistakenly called her animal motif a crow because I'll be honest, I can't tell the difference. People say it's easy to tell the difference, but all I see is mama crow, baby crow. Ava is in fact a raven, and when I realized that, I screamed because I was like, oh, the telltale heart, the telltale heart, the telltale heart. I can only explain it after my local Dollar Tree kicked me out for the second time that day, because with a raven motif for Ava, it means she was truly set up to fail, just like Eve. Listen, I'm one of those people that 100% believes that God completely set Adam and Eve up. It's like a parent telling their kid not to drink bleach, but then not really kid-proofing the bathroom cabinets. It's much like the story of Cain and Abel, where God is clearly setting up a scenario just to make things exciting, like a Sims player. Instead of a cow plant, it's the tree of knowledge. I say set up because ravens can be associated with death and mourning thanks to Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven, which featured the narrator mourning a lost lover, but it's also associated with death through a figure like the Morrigan, who was said to foretell who was going to die in battle. But ravens also stand as a symbol for knowledge thanks to their association with Odin, and Ava's first free time event solidifies that she is a well of knowledge in her own right. Like really, the ultimate program should have given her the title of ultimate mathematician. And you can kind of see a little of Cain in her because her ultimate title is something she's saddled with and she's overlooked because of it, whereas characters like Wolfgang get to flourish with their title. So while I was right about the Cain and Abel dynamic coming into play, I was wrong about it being between Damon and Wolfgang. Ava gets to play the role of both Eve and Cain. But back to my earlier comment, I mainly screamed the telltale heart because it's a story about a murderer whose lie is literally their downfall. They come up with seemingly the perfect murder only for their lie to unravel and force them to admit to what they've done. In the story, the murderer just starts hearing the heart in the floorboards and it drives them insane. But in Eden's Garden, the role of the beating heart is played by Damon. So Ava was not only set up to fail by Tozu, but also by her own creators.
Then I've got something for you right here.
She's got a gun!
It's a letter, Lisa.
After this chapter, I think it's safe to say that my favorite trope in the Danganronpa games, or any murder mystery, is the trope of this character was in this place, so they couldn't be the killer, and then the mystery does a 180 where it's like, oh, bestie, you're the only one it could have been. V3 did a similar thing, except it started in the first trial and paid off in uncovering the mastermind later on. It generally fills me with joy to have that little epiphany, and this trial gave me that even if I was still in denial. I think for me at least, this chapter really played with denial a little bit, because even though the writers wanted to completely follow a different narrative path than the main series, Wolfgang and Ava were still two characters that had the potential to be more, and so some people expected them to live for at least a few more chapters, myself included. Even the moment Wolfgang was revealed to be the first death, I was very much still in denial because I kept suspecting everyone else but Ava. Because wouldn't that be too obvious? Like, haha, Ava is Eve and she commits the first sin. Would it be that simple? And the answer is yes. I can admit that sometimes I forget that the answer can be that simple, because without being complicated, it can still trip people up. I mean, that's the point of Glass Onion. Hell, how many people initially watched Scream and thought, it can't be the boyfriend, that's too obvious? A fact that even the movie itself plays on, but then it just is Billy because it couldn't really be anyone else. This entire chapter and the prologue proved that we were always going to lose Wolfgang and Ava. The moment characters are given a little more screen time than normal in a chapter, you can expect that they'll have something to do with the case of that chapter. And the two characters of these chapters receiving the most time and energy were Wolfgang and Ava. It was always going to be them. Their beef was the main driving force of the chapter, no matter how too obvious it seemed, which is why I was in denial, especially when it comes to the religious imagery about Ava being Eve. It all felt too soon, so of course it caught me off guard. And so there goes the presumed Byakuya and Kyoko of the game. Chapter 1, just gone. It's this way that this chapter also, as a whole, does a really good job at building several characters as well as the general energy of the killing game. Because I think the whole thing of them doing a mock trial in the prologue kind of let a lot of the characters have this false sense of security. They weren't connected to the victim at all. And it happens a lot in real life too, just look at how people in the true crime community can be hella insensitive when covering someone's really gruesome murder. Like, imagine losing a relative and then hearing that their murder ended up on something called My Favorite Murder. I think I would forgive someone for crashing out over that. There is an irony in Wolfgang being the main person to humanize Kara in the mock trial. He didn't forget that Tozu said that this was a real murder that happened. He still saw her as a person and her death as a tragedy. At the end of the day, they are covering the trial of someone who actually died, and in Wolfgang's eyes, the only person who generally seemed to care about getting Kara justice was himself. And it really helps hone in on themes like ignorance and hypocrisy. Because the major gag about Ava's rant about feeling unsafe is that she wasn't even wrong in the slightest. I'm aware I'm about to sound hella biased, but it's actually ridiculous how all of the characters tried to act like Ava was being unreasonable when she was right to be scared. This cast in particular is so easily compelled by groupthink, it's frightening sometimes. If Diana hadn't spoken up in defense of Ava and Damon, everyone would have agreed to prevent both of them from exploring the pharmacy with them, all because Wolfgang suggested it. Even during the trial, it's actually concerning how easy it is to turn the cast against certain characters, a thing Ava probably planned for. Without realizing how that can be an issue, they all defaulted to Wolfgang as their moral compass because of both his talent and his age. When Damon suggested that maybe Wolfgang's passion and talent should be taken into account in the prologue, everyone took that and just put him on a pedestal. They ignored his angry outburst towards them in favor of just pretending he had everything handled when he never did. Leading up to his death, Wolfgang's behavior felt a lot like Eiji in Danganronpa V3. In the end, it wasn't Wolfgang who was the sheep, it was the characters that follow him. And it's really a perspective thing, right? To me, Wolfgang is the embodiment of the road to hell being paved with good intentions. Because the Wolfgang I know as someone playing as Damon is someone who is purposely stubborn and contrarian when it comes to dealing with people he doesn't really like. He claims he doesn't want to sow discord among the group until it's towards Damon and Ava. I especially noticed that whenever Damon or Ava said anything that supported something he said, he immediately backtracked on it. Like this, Wolfgang makes a comment about how maybe the drugs being easily accessible is dangerous and Damon agrees, suggesting that maybe they should lock it up. Wolfgang's response, "Oh no, it's not that dangerous, just have faith no one will use it maliciously." Mind you, Kai raises a reasonable concern that someone may not use this on someone else, but maybe use it on themselves. Wolfgang urges everyone not to play into the hands of Tozu and his motives for doing things. Ava says something similar. Wolfgang's response, "Well, no, not really. Sure, you can say Ava only deterred people from looking at the profiles to save her own skin, but Wolfgang didn't know that. He was disagreeing just to disagree with Ava." And judging by his nervousness when Grace brings up his age and then the scene where he makes the suggestion for the blackmail, he's definitely someone who would not want people getting information about him that could completely change their perception of him. He will rally against playing the mind games of the killing game and then literally change his mind on safety because Ava and Damon agree with him. He's looked at as responsible because he's the oldest, but he's still 22 and still fully capable of being stubborn for stubborn's sake. And you know it's all based on agreeing with him because Winona also has the same type of views that Ava and Damon have, but she's not as vocal about it. As such, she gets to avoid the outcast treatment and suspicion. She's already been dragged by Wolfgang in front of everyone before, and she's not gonna do that again. Wolfgang's blind optimism wasn't based in anything factual. It was basically just a brand of toxic positivity, ignoring the depths of the issue for the sake of putting on a face. He didn't know any of these people enough to proudly declare that no one would kill, yet he did so anyway. And if you vocally said the opposite, like Ava did, you'd be shunned accordingly for the simple reason of ruining the vibes. Don't remind anyone that when desperate enough, human beings are completely capable of being deceptive for their own survival, especially ultimates. If you played through the entire Danganronpa series or even the you know that's more than true. Most ultimates are diamonds that are literally only made through pressure. Becoming an ultimate has always been a life people had to claw to grab onto. Why should we assume that ultimates are above deception and murder because they have a fancy title? Shouldn't Kara's trial have proven that to him? Even Ava killing Wolfgang wasn't this moment of, see, Wolfgang was right about Ava. It was a moment of a self-fulfilling prophecy. In that, the child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth sense. You isolated her and made her out to be some scheming monster, and then acted surprised that she, schemed and did a monstrous act because she felt isolated. And I may sound biased. That's because I am. But I demand everyone stand in Ava's shoes for a moment. Wolfgang has literally made you an outcast and shows a clear disdain for you for not agreeing with him. And in this small instance in the beginning of chapter 1 of him trying to bar you and Damon from exploring the pharmacy, he's just demonstrated something terrifying. That he has the power to restrict your movement because most of everyone will not challenge him. You think you wouldn't be scared too? Are you confident that you wouldn't fear for your life? Especially when it's obvious to you that his optimism is an act? The reality of the situation is that Wolfgang is just as lost as everyone else, if anything, even more so considering he's most likely been coddled in a way that the other characters might not have been. Something shown with him doing laundry. A scene that shows that even Kai knows how to do his own laundry. Intentional or not, it shows that Wolfgang shouldn't be relied on as much as he is. He's turned into this community leader when in reality, he's probably better off just being a helping hand. To me, that's where he shines best. When he tries to take control, he becomes his worst self. Dare I say, there is a chance that he turns into a version of his father when he's given the reins to anything. And personally, I feel like in the same way Ava lied to take control of the situation in a prologue, Wolfgang kind of has that same thing where he feels he needs to be in control because for most of his life, his dad was the one in control. His dedication to his version of justice led him to isolating 2 of his classmates because they didn't agree to blindly follow his lead. He proceeded to always find issue with their presence and try to turn people against them, something that everyone else was more than happy to oblige because they didn't want to question him because they have made him this kind of linchpin in their sanity and hope. If something goes wrong, we'll just ask Wolfgang. Wolfgang will know what to do. Thank goodness Wolfgang was here. What would Wolfgang do? Wolfgang, 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 Wolfgang. The name! The name! Wolfgang was, in fact, a wolfish mind with control of a herd of sheep. That even includes Winona. Even if she didn't agree and pointed out how the group thing was annoying, away from the group, she still said nothing and participated. In fact, the only time she spoke up was when Ava was trying to get people not to look at their profiles. And that's because Ava was the safe one to protest against. If Wolfgang was the one that lied about his talents, they all would have made excuses for him. And I mentioned earlier that there was an irony to Wolfgang being the one to try and maintain the humanity of Kara. And that's because the other gag is that despite holding him as their bastion of hope, most of the people that followed him were dead ass about to just let his culprit get away. Even funnier, it was his murderer that convinced them to investigate. Do you know what a sick joke that is? Your murderer is the one that convinces your dick riders to care. In a twisted turn of fate, Wolfgang's death was nearly treated the same as Kara's. And the kicker, the absolute kicker, the person who brought him justice was none other than the other person he tried to isolate. The characters help, make no mistake, I will never downplay how much smarter they are than normal Danganronpa characters. But if Damon didn't do that legwork, if Damon wasn't dedicated to putting things together, if Damon wasn't there to have the slightest moment of doubt about Diana being the killer, Ava would have easily led everyone else to believe that Diana did it, and because the groupthink kicks their asses so much, it would have worked. And let me be clear, I'm not saying that Wolfgang was intentionally manipulating people. I don't think so at all, at least not completely. I think he was trying his best, but was human, and everyone else eventually threw that responsibility of keeping things together onto him without really respecting his own mental well-being. I do think he took advantage of their trust by trying to constantly get them to isolate Ava and Damon just because he didn't like them. Which leads us to Diana. Diana became another favorite of mine in this chapter because of how her dedication to kindness overshadowed the groupthink multiple times. And while I agree her little statement was just her not really reading the room, I completely admire her passion. I do think she has the capacity to grow past the shortcomings of Wolfgang's form of hollow optimism because she genuinely does seem to care. After all, she was the only one to actually reach out to both Ava and Damon and actually ask them how they're feeling instead of just sweeping it under the rug. And I felt for her completely when she found out that Ava tried to frame her, because I've been both Ava and Diana at certain points. I do also think that while Wolfgang's refusal to believe that no one would kill is an ignorant idea, I also believe that Damon and Ava's view is in a similar position of being a stance that's too extreme. Both ends just being ideas that can foster a perfect killing game environment. And it's because of those two extremes clashing that a killing was inevitable. Wolfgang trusted too much, on the surface, and Ava trusted too little. Neither was necessarily wrong in their views, but they were too stubborn to challenge their own ideas of how they viewed people or the state of the situation. A killing could have been prevented if Wolfgang wasn't so desperate to make Ava and Damon out to be the enemies. But it could have also been prevented if Ava trusted more, at least trusted Damon. But I think deep down, it wasn't that she couldn't trust Damon, it was that they were outnumbered. Should Wolfgang decide anything, it would be his sweet words against Damon's. Like, imagine this, Wolfgang kills Damon and frames Ava for it. In the chapter, Ava explains that she lied about her talent to have more control over the situation, and it helped her have confidence while investigating in the mock trial. She was able to have that same confidence again in the first trial because she was still in control as the culprit. She was in lying mode again. So imagine her not in control. With the only person who had her back dead, she would have no one actually on her side. All Wolfgang has to do is remind everyone that Ava is suspicious and a liar. Maybe Diana questions it, maybe not. Maybe Winona questions it, maybe not. Neither of them have actually shown Ava that she could rely on them. Not in the same way Damon has. So back to Ava, is it paranoia? Yeah, but in a killing game surrounded by strangers, can you afford to not be paranoid? Even a little bit. Side note, I honestly don't mean for this video to be so anti-Wolfgang, but I couldn't help it. I like Wolfgang when he isn't being a dickhead and is actually being helpful, like how patient he is with characters like Eloise and Toshiko, but I won't lie, I did have a I wish you well in hell moment.
I wish you well.
I wish you well. In hell.
I really...
Burn in hell.
Let's
Another character I'd like to highlight is Desmond, because I was lying a little bit about how Wolfgang had this stubborn attitude towards the people he obviously didn't like. Some people already pointed it out, but Wolfgang probably didn't actually trust anyone, and I think Desmond was actually the first person he didn't trust. Desmond says he never killed anyone in the prologue, and Wolfgang is very passionately against murderers, obviously. Wolfgang really had no reason to trust that Desmond was telling the truth. I can give him that. But he showed that anyone else taking the reins of safeguarding the group was kind of a sour subject for him, mainly if he didn't really like them. Like I said, Wolfgang doesn't work when he's leading, because when he's leading, he seems to have a problem with others providing input. Desmond checking to see if all of the rooms were locked and then confronting everyone about it only for Wolfgang to act like he should have gotten clearance from him is a red flag for me. Desmond could have kept it to himself, but he made it a point to let others know and even suggested bunking together. It was actual safety measures rather than just going off vibes. And it was exactly what the group needed more of. Desmond's approach is the needed middle ground between Wolfgang and Ava. You don't need to outright distrust everyone, but you also don't need to blindly trust each other either. Having safety guards in a community is how they stay safe. It's like seatbelts, vaccines, or traffic lights. You can lie and say that they're not needed, but they saved more lives than their detractors will ever admit. Safety guards not only act as a means of protection, but also as a means of being able to properly dish out actual justice. Safeguards help hold actual threats to the community accountable. Laws against murder may not stop murders, but those laws in place mean that murderers can be held accountable in an actual justice system. You should know that, lawyer boy. And that's the goal of bunking with each other in the first chapter, to hold you accountable. Desmond doing all of that really just solidified him being a favorite of mine. The perfect middle ground. And yes, I do feel bad for how much I suspected him in the first chapter. Why do you ask? Personally, it's only even more hammered home how much that middle ground is needed, as both Diana and Damon's reaction to the whole thing was to double down on their previous blind optimism and stubborn pessimism. It's like, seriously? Have either of you learned nothing? One major thing I really have to give credit to the writing team for is making sure that the other characters were actually helpful during the investigations, but especially during the trials. Even though they had to be kicked into gear, they were genuine help. I had to go back and watch some cases from the main games because I thought I was making it up, but I wasn't. The characters being screwed if the MCs didn't exist is a running joke for a reason. The side characters in the DR games are always so useless during the trials unless their talent can literally be translated as helpful in that moment. And it gets to a point where it's annoying because they end up feeling boxed in. They start and end at their talents. The Eden's Gardens characters actually feel knowledgeable. Like, I love how quick we can blow through certain sections of the trial because everyone decided to pack some critical thinking today. The only time the trial felt slow is when I, as the player, was stumped on something. So it was a breath of fresh air. Especially because it feels like the characters and their talent don't necessarily box them in terms of knowledge. Jet, John, and Ava all knowing something about lithium batteries is an example of this. All three of them have talents that would lead to them knowing about it, even if their amount of knowledge on the subject is different. John also having some knowledge of certain things that are seemingly outside of his title because his talent literally allows him to travel a lot and gain that knowledge from his crew and the places they go. That's great. A lot of characters being into gaming in their own ways rather than it being treated like some niche thing. Great. I like it when character personalities and backstories intersect like that. That potential to create new dynamics between characters for future chapters is fun.
It is hot as hell in this funky ass, hot ass room I'm in. Is that the Grim Reaper?
And finally, we can talk about Ava's execution. It's probably more to say, but it is one of my favorite parts of Danganronpa. I think it's because it's kind of an extension of the whole characters getting something personalized trope. I love that trope. And I really loved her execution, playing on both the whole liar liar pants on fire thing, but also her real talent as a mathlete. I also love executions where there is supposedly an exit because there never is, and characters fall for it every time. Every single time. It also reminded me a lot of Kurumi's execution, just that desire to live no matter what. I think it brings out something visceral. Maybe I should also mention the minigame confrontations. I was caught off guard personally and stumbled a bit, but that's mainly because I'm not a bullet hell person, not to mention I had the action difficulty on normal, but by the end I got it. It helps being related to an Undertale fan. Trust, by the end of Eden's Garden, I will not flop that many times again. Even if the contents of the envelope seem horrible, give the person a chance to explain themselves. Hey, so Wolfgang, you're not gonna like who has yours. Nice going, bro. You hit the jackpot. Bet it's cause I was here with you, huh? Jeez, this was getting hard to watch. There's only one move which could save me now. Taking a deep breath, I steadied my grip on the controller and pushed both joysticks as hard as I could. He was so nice to everyone.
Stop the cap. Stop the cap right now. Stop the cap.
Game, console.
It's over.
Ava, we know the truth.
Hang her now! I got the rope right here!
I thought you trusted me.
Girl, I thought you trusted me!
There's no proof I killed Wolfgang.
Whoa! What?
I didn't.
You can't just do that! Dalio! Ugh, the British. Hey, wait! Damn it, he's already out of here. How nimble was this guy?
Until everyone knows me as...
Okay. What the fuck? We all need to trust each other if we plan on getting through this killing game. If you put your faith in your peers, they will put faith in you.
Bitch, you better be joking.
I thought you trusted me.
Fuck out of here. Just stay still in a certain spot and it'll probably be better that way.
There's no proof I killed
Stop
Wolfgang.
moving!
There's no proof I killed
I get it! I get it!
This isn't fair.
The kid who lied about her talents and tried to lie about the Tozy trinkets. I should have known. I should have known only Eva fucking Sadaka would kill Wolfgang!
Shut up, man!
Oh shit! Based reaction? Holy shit!
Kai, please do not start becoming my favorite right now.